Does my hair look okay? No, I'm just
should
kidding.
have. October 3rd is the German Unity Remembrance Day, the nationwide public holiday commemorating German unification. So in honor of that, this is why I decided to go with this one this week. Belonging by Nora Krug. Certainly comes with a great deal of critical acclaim for good reason. Actually, I thought it was very nice. Anybody have any comments?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I thought I was the only one that kind of felt like Nora did. Well, actually, I didn't really think I was the only one, but I hadn't heard this view, so pretty much the same view. Although I didn't grow up in Germany, I have a German ancestry, but I've never been to Germany. But I used to always say, well, I'd rather go to Disney World, in Germany. But I thought it's quite common to have this, it's a big stain, Anyways, that's all.
Well,
rather go to Disneyland in Germany, man.
Well, yeah, I obviously, I was biased. I had everything I associated with it was World War II and World War I, and then all the camps all over, but able to look at it now. I'm able to, there's kind of a way to kind of process it. And
I can tell you're a rationalist. You believe World War II should have never happened.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah, the Ken Burns documentary too, and there's just a lot of things that were in that documentary that were known, and it's like Ken Burns is like God when he delivers. Everyone believes it finally. But it's about time. I like, and Minnesota. Well, I don't want to get too. Charles Lindbergh was also a very talented, fabulous person in many ways, other than being what he was. In Minneapolis, the Lindbergh terminals. It's this thing, and it gets. I just, I don't want to get into it, but Henry Ford, and I knew about this. I mean, a lot of people knew about it for a long time, but a lot of people didn't, and it was kind of shushed up. And the Greatest Generation and everything they waited kind of until everyone almost, died before dealing with America's kind of, and other countries too. They're biased, and I had no idea it was that bad.
What was that bad?
Just the anti-Semitism across the United States. If you go by the Ken Burns movie, the polls and everything, it was just merciless. I mean, just worse than I could ever. That was the state of, that the United States. Then, African Americans really didn't have a vote at all. So they had Jim Crow, but still, it's and the State Department had it. It's. But with popular, I just thought it would break a little bit more. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know.
Okay, you believe that human existence, life, and the universe must figure with a logical, rational theory.
Well, yeah, and then also it was tailored. It was, I don't know, you could see the pattern developing. You could see the checking to see You know, all other countries want these people. You could see, you know, dictators, they push things. You could see it spelled out. You could see it all set up. They knew they had the camps. They said, well, if we bomb the railroads, they just build more. It's like, it's not that easy to build railroads. I see, I'm getting mad. I'm sorry. That's, you know, and then they said, well, we're worried that if American forces find out, it's on behalf of people that aren't, you know, immigrants.
Well, it's an interesting theory. Yeah, I remember there was that debate, the idea that they could stop the final solution with bombing. I don't know whether it would have been effective. I suppose there must be a fair amount of discussion of it I haven't seen.
Well, yeah, the bombing was very inaccurate. I remember, but a lot of it was just public sentiment, not to dare risk any lives, you know, doing anything to disrupt. And then also IBM, it didn't talk about IBM, but major corporations and IBM didn't have computers. They had those, they had
punch card sort of systems. And
yeah,
that, yeah.
and that's what they used. But then Roosevelt couldn't stop. He didn't have executive powers to stop companies.
I think there's a very nice example shown in the old comedy film, Francis the Talking Mule Joins the Army. It's when Don Knotts gets selected incorrectly for a woman's Army Corps instructor. The card goes the wrong way.
Well, that's interesting. You know, I think part of it, you know, may have been that they said that most other places they have an origin of land, you know, they didn't have Israel created. And so people looked at these Jewish people and they would say, whatever constitutes being Jewish, I don't know exactly what it is, but they would say, you know, these people are stateless, you know, they don't have their own land. They just roam from area to area and then go and collect places and then do stuff and, you know, become bankers and jewelers and, you know, start hoarding everything.
Well, the weird bit is how Hitler had often personal friends who were Jews.
Yes.
It's a weird aspect of Hitler. Even in the 1930s, there was a case of that little girl he was rather fond of. She'd come along for cups of tea and little chats. Hitler seemed to have that thing. He liked interacting with children. And his, the Nazi party came down on him and said, you know, you can't associate with her because she was part Jewish or something like that. And he was quite disappointed.
Yeah.
Even in the 1930s, I have recalled stories that how Hitler, back in his days when he was a starving artist, so to speak, he made friends with a Jew and wandered around with him. He even said, you know, I think the Jews have a finer appreciation of what's good in life. I look at the Germans and I think they're very boorish.
Yeah. Well,
so in Hitler, you're dealing with, in many respects, a very sophisticated mind. He wasn't just a crude.
Oh, no. He's, you know, I thought about racism, anti-Semitism. It's not simple. It's not people just have a visceral hate. It's actually on many different levels, and a lot of it is practicality. If you're amoral, don't have any morals, people use it when it's convenient for them.
Well, you sure amoral?
Well, a lot of
amoral means that you don't really have any attitude that's good or evil. You simply think in terms.
That might have been the best word. Well, like Strom Thurmond, like he had an African American daughter who he paid for college and everything, and he didn't hate her. Obviously, he wasn't a good parent, and he was still racist. But you know, it's complicated.
Excuse me, I'm just going to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it's war. You know, it's inhumaneness, and there's people that can, and oh, and also like I still hear you know, racist and anti-Semitic talk little by little. It's kind of ekes out like gas, you know, just beep every once in a while, every few years from people, and it's like they're usually very educated, progressive people. And I hear it from people that aren't too, but it comes out, there's just a lot of, well, I don't want to, a lot of people really believe that the Jews are all rich and they're all controlling the world and that they're all selfish, and that it's just amazing how that carries on. If that's one thing that has eternal life, that has eternal life. And so I won't say anything more. And then also, well, up north in Minnesota, all the good girls at the schools are getting knocked up by African-American students, and they're giving them drugs, and they're driving to Mexico, and you know, it's all those, you know, Jews and stuff like that. And it's like these people, you know, there's a lot of stupid things people believe, and this is just one of them, but this is harmful. I'm just amazed. And in the African-American community too, there's a lot of and you know, the civil rights, PBS, I don't know if it's correct, they said half of the civil rights workers that went to the South to try to register people to vote and everything were, I guess, Jewish Americans. So I'll shout about that, but I'm just amazed that Germany, they said, had 500,000 people, and but you know, the United States was heavily it was the Great Depression. They didn't want immigrants.
Sorry, Germany had what, 500,000 what?
They had 500,000, and then they had more millions of Jews outside of Germany.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think
Yeah,
the official figures were fairly small. I'm not too sure what they were. They're only something about like 150,000 or something like that.
yeah.
But it's certainly in Germany, I have heard that the Jews owned an enormous amount of the wealth in Germany, even though they were a relatively small group. The Bismarckian Germany had been what you would term progressive, had been the most, what you might call enlightened towards Jews. So back in the 1870s, when the Bismarck took over, he wanted to end the differences between Germans. The Jews spoke German, so he thought of them as Germans. And that was the status they had until World War I. They were thought of as being equal with the rest of the Germans. Famously, Friedrich Nietzsche's sister, her husband, had to leave Germany because of his anti-Semitism. He went off and formed that small colony in South America, which failed. So people have all sorts of attitudes.
Oh, I know. I mean, Irish and English, French, English. I mean, people get just absolutely. But this is such a tiny. It's really obscene how tiny population is just brutalized by the mass majority. It's obscene.
Well, I don't know. Were the Nazis right? Were they wrong? I don't know. I see all sorts of attitudes in the world. I see China is engaging in genocide at the moment. I see the Western press. I can't say who's right or wrong absolutely in this conflict in the Ukraine. But you look at the Western press and they're getting into the game of dehumanizing the Russians like they're a race of monsters or something. It's just the same old. The problem is having views like that and not considering the opposite is what's risky. So you say, oh, Jews are bad, or you have to put your hand up and say, well, is that correct? How do I know that? I'm simply proceeding with a thesis without checking it out. And I see a hell of a lot of that today in common thought, that people have views, but they're the views they like. They don't challenge their own views in any way.
But you see, my argument is, if you have a population that's less than 1% of the country, you don't have to kill them. You can take away all their banking jobs, all their possessions. You can freeze all their accounts, to have all their wealth distributed across to Germans, and they have them live in poverty. You don't have to see this. It's much worse than actual thinking people are greedy. I mean, that would be terrible. But it goes far beyond that. There's this absolute envy. And it is envy. There's people who envy the Chinese. There's people that envy the Chinese. There are people that envy anyone in the suburbs. Anyone's doing better than them.
You should read Nietzsche then. That was one of his basic points, the dominance of envy in people that call themselves rational.
Well, the thing is, too, I mean, before World War II, I don't know if this is correct, but I mean, being Jewish, or it wasn't a race. It was a religion only. And I don't know where.
Well, no, not correct. Being Jewish is always has been, more than any other religion, just about being about a race. You are the chosen people. You are the top ones. You are it. A lot of Jews still believe that. They think that they're the best and most favoured by providence in the world.
Yeah. But so the fatherland thinks that they're pretty blessed too. The German Deutschland, they pretty much were, above everyone else. They had a right to as much land as they needed to grow their population and country, and others be damned. And they were on top of the food chain. See, people that fight wars, they usually think they're on top, the thing is, you can take away people's political power and their financial power. You don't have to be absolutely ruthless and have no morality at all.
Well, I'd probably disagree that any political program which is dictatorial requires you being ruthless. That's even revealed in the comic. Unless the powers at the top were completely ruthless, they were going to be stopped by weak protest. There's going to be people who are going to say, it was pointed out in the comic, people are saying, they're saying to the whatever who are rounding up the Jews in those particular towns, why are you doing this? What's the point? What does it achieve? And they're told to shut up.
But the thing is, though, and people, Germans do it to Germans, English, French, they do horrible things to each other. And it's based on a lot of different things and classism and things like that. But the thing is, when your population is so tiny, it is just absolutely beyond belief. I mean, it's not beyond belief because it happens a lot. The overall dominant groups, and that happens with other people. But in our American history, and the thing is, it's still quite common to have envy and think. And the thing is, no, it's not. It's really not correct. It's not right, because there's people that look at people that are white, like I guess I'm white or Caucasian. They hate us. I mean, as a group, when they don't hate individuals, they maybe like individuals, but they say the white people because look at the disparities. When women and men look at each other, we hate it. It's easy to hate a group when you put them all together as an abstract idea, and then say, okay, they're chocolate cake now.
That's basic to human nature. That's built into the human animal, envy.
Yeah, it is.
I want what you've got. That's all life. All life seeks to expand, seeks to propagate itself in some way or other. Even Even Inhumans attempt to propagate themselves intellectually.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much part of, but it's, is that really what we want? I mean, what good is it? What good does it do?
Oh, well, it's not a question of what you suppose is good and noble in human nature. The good and noble idea is always at war with the instinct of the ape.
Well, yeah, but you know, there's a lot of there's a lot of I don't know. I think a lot of it is like you said, it's practical. It has to do with resources and other things and other groups. The farther away you live, and you know, people they fight to keep their communities and their, you know, themselves alive, and they fight to stay popular with the population, right? Because the population is what kind of overruns everything. The population, no police can stop a certain percentage of population. If a certain percentage of the population decides we're not going to have any organized.
Okay, Peter, how much philosophy have you read in your life?
Well, I know. I mean, I like this book, and you know, the thing is,
I just read it last week. How long have you been familiar with it?
Well, just a week or so. And the thing is, it's almost like, why would you? There's no other group. Why would a group have to? It's based on religion. You know, they say the Jewish people are the only people that think that they're. What about divine rights of kids?
I would probably say it's an example of culture. Cultures will compete. For example, we have the Turkey decided it wanted to wipe out the Armenians. Curiously, so I was always a bit aware of the history of the United States. You have heard of the 7063 proclamation line, haven't you?
No.
In 1763, the British government designated the whole area of land. They just defeated the French in the 7 Years' War, and they gained all the territory from the Allegheny Mountains. What are they called in America? That on the east coast, you've got that mountain range. And well, they made all the lands from the Allegheny Mountains to the Mississippi as an Indian reservation. Oh, the Appalachians, right, the Appalachians, okay.
Appalachians.
Appalachians, they were all made an Indian reservation and whites settlement.
Yeah, I don't like comparative history very much. I know that's the thing to do. I just don't like comparative history. I don't think it's comparing the same things.
Well, this is the thing. Prior to the American Revolution, the British government was taking steps to prevent what they saw would become a genocide.
Oh yeah,
because
it's not to say that you know, there's evil people and people that aren't evil. It's very complicated, and then like many of the camps in Germany, most of them weren't. There was a few that were just the most horrible, and those were set, and but not all of them, and they're all. The thing is, it wasn't consistent. It's not that there was like evil German, you know, and there's people that, you know, stigmatize Germans, you know, and you know.
Well, actually, the German extermination camps and concentration camps in general weren't the worst in history.
Well, that's not. But the thing is, it's not like no one's grading. It's not about grading. Yeah, it's just that it happened so recent, and it was. This is the thing.
What people were pointing out when they went through these camps is so many of them had rules. They had a set of rules.
Mhm.
And the people knew that they could survive within this set of rules. But, you know, you have other things, you know, you had the mass exterminations by the Russians of the political undesirables.
Oh,
In a strange way, this is a thing that these, the gulags were often far more horrible due to the lack of rules.
oh, you know what? I remember when a lot of people, you know, now it's Republicans love Russia, you know, it was the left before we knew about all the, and still today there's people that minimize it's apps because people are, you know, they get politically biased when they shouldn't be. It's about, no, it's not about Russia, the things, my God, it's beyond barbaric. I'm not, it's not a contest, but yeah, it's horrible and just absolutely beyond. And China too, and how it's, you know, but the thing is, it's why, how can we stop this from happening again? I mean, you just can't go right now. How will you stop a group that's minority? How do we stop people from just going in and committing genocide and then taking them out, like the American Indians and people like that? How do we stop that again? And then how do we do it with a group of people? It's because we envy them. And I know they do, because I hear people educated, you know, progressive, you know, they're smart in many ways. I guess they are smart. Many smart people are anti-Semitic and racist.
Somebody has to take the initiative to be the better person. I mean, I had an incident today. I'd like to share this. I work in Los Angeles, which is a very diverse city. Well, some people would say it's diverse, some people would not, but we have a lot of Hispanic people that work where I work. And there was a white lady that came in, and we don't have a lot of white ladies that come in. And she was there to meet with the person in charge, and this Hispanic lady kind of just brushed her off, like, and I heard it. I heard that interaction. And so I'm Asian. I'm an Asian American lady. So I went over to the white lady and said, hey, I heard you're, you know, waiting for someone. And she said, yeah, I'm waiting to see this person. And I followed up, and you know, the Hispanic lady had just totally brushed her off and totally just left her there. And I found the person she was looking for. And, you know, it kind of made me feel like I feel marginalized at work because, like I said, there's a lot of Hispanic people there, and they do things with each other. They celebrate each other's birthdays and stuff like that. And I'm not really included in that. And I kind of noticed that today. And so anyway, the point is, when I'm bringing this up is, I guess it's a kind, you know, it's a micro example of what you're talking about. You know, I think somebody has to take the initiative. And unfortunately, sometimes that person has to be the sacrificial lamb. You know, somebody has to take the initiative. That's all I'm saying.
The initiative to do what exactly?
To be the bigger person. To be.
Yeah, but what does bigger mean?
To be somebody who intervenes and tries to.
I think Caroline's got it. I don't have any problem with what Caroline's saying. I think, yeah, it's
well,
just,
I'm
it's
trying,
just a basic.
I know, but I
Yeah,
just,
but
I need,
you're expressing an opinion,
I
and
think that,
you're saying your opinion will lead to something good.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
no,
Caroline's
no,
right.
the thing is, we don't know if it'll work or not, okay? People putting effort to do good, it may not result in the way they want, but at least they're trying. And if we don't try, we won't ever get to point B, you know, from point A. So I suppose having some faith that your actions will make a difference for the better is necessary, and I can certainly
But the point is, how long do you wait for the proof of that action or policy to prove to be a good outcome?
well, I don't think there's any one formula for that, but I mean, in this example at work, which I think I don't know, I think this example is kind of a good small example. Like I plan on following up eventually with the lady that's in charge at my work and talking about some things about how you know, I don't feel that the whole office is united, and I don't know how long I'm gonna wait for that, but I mean, I don't want to wait until I'm so isolated from everybody else that you know, I'm feeling desperate and depressed and you know, then and feeling like I don't want to take action, because I think that can happen with a group of people that, you know, they just get so desperate and they're just like, well, you know, fuck it, like, you know, what's the point? And you know, that's why we have people that don't vote, because they just feel like, what's the point? They don't feel like their actions are gonna make a difference. So I guess, you know, before you get to that part where you lose hope, you should probably follow up before that point.
Yeah, I think what we've been talking about for all this time, I think, is the idea of multiculturalism. In other words, different different races, I guess, different nationalities, living within the boundaries of a single country, and whether in the end that's a good idea or a bad idea. I think a lot of people are desperate for it to work, because people want to believe that the world is basically a free place, and you can get on a plane and move to any country you want, and set up
liberal democratic dream, is it?
Yeah, it's a political point of view, and there are lots of people putting lots of money into that idea that national boundaries actually don't exist. And I think what's up Putin's nose is that those boundaries are about to be fractured and punctured, and he doesn't want that. And he sees that a peaceful Russia is a Russia full of Russians getting on with their business and not bothering other people. But a lot of people don't see the future of the world like that. They see it as all the people of the world mixing together and creating sort of, I don't know, areas. Yeah, and thing we got to think about is that is there any, and this is a real hot topic, or a hot notion. Is there any genetic parts of human nature that are sorry, I'll come back to that. So I've got to phrase it correctly. because if you don't, it sounds pretty awful. But like my background is I on my mother's side, I started in Germany, and my great grandfather was Jewish, and it goes back to what you were saying, Stephen, that a lot of people left Germany around the 1870s. That's when he was. Then he came to England, and changed his name. So he was trying to hide the fact that he was Jewish. His name was Haman, Jacob.
No,
Haman.
there was a large number of Jews in England, around Manchester and places like that. I remember talking to one guy because my ancestry came from Lancashire and Yorkshire, and yeah, he was Jewish. His dad was Jewish, but his dad got kicked out because he was an alcoholic.
No, right.
So was a Jew. After that, his family wasn't really Jewish, just descended from Jews, but they didn't.
Yes,
didn't,
yeah. So what does that mean? I mean, I'm 12.5% Jewish, right? My great grandfather was Jewish. Makes me 12.
well, this is all complex.
So what does that mean?
What's
what I was saying,
biological race?
Is that
And what
significant?
is
Does it mean anything?
what is culture? You have biological race, which must count for something somewhere, but exactly what we don't know. And then we have culture, which is very distinct.
I think it counts for everything.
What's that?
Culture.
No, it's not everything, because what we are as a biological entity will count for
I think
something.
it does, because people will go to war over it.
I'm confused. What was your initial question, Sam?
Whether there is any talking about the idea of I think they're called immigrant bubbles, where the Jews were like that, and they collected together in streets and in areas. There's Chinese quarters. There's there's areas here in Texas. There are areas where it's very, very Mexican, and so what is the reason for that? And is there anything, going back to my?
Oh, that's simple, man. You missed out.
I was fumbling with the idea of, is there any genetic behavior? Is there any genetic
birds of a feather flock
that
together?
gives the voice of that is the creation of that culture.
I think
Birds of a feather will flock together. You can't stop it. It happened in the Roman Empire.
Yes, but
You had
why?
Jewish quarters.
My question is why?
Oh, I'm not God. I'm not God. I didn't create the world. I don't have that power. I can only observe it. Why? Why do these things happen? Well, who knows? We only know it happens. We can see that in the Roman Empire. You had different quarters with different ethnic communities for centuries, and the Greeks and the Jews would occasionally fight each other because they thought they were in this. Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I want to answer that question. I mean, I do think that genetics does result in similar personalities and I mean, so your question is, does genetics play a role in
Culture.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say yes, it does. I don't know. I mean, you can kind of see among different groups of people, their behavior can be, described a certain way, generalized in a certain way. I mean, of course, you're going to have variances within a population of personalities and stuff like that.
Of course you do.
Yeah. But I would say yes. I think genetics plays a role.
But I think it does too. But I think it is A lot of it is, it's not like, I don't think a direct hardwired instinctive connection. I think people generally are comfortable with people that look like them, even people with different bodies, people with long arms, or people, people could break it on each other up into cliques and groups. It's just amazing. But being it's a taboo to say this, but when you have adopted child and a biological child, there's tension, and then tension can make good music. It makes good drum. But the thing is, we can't say now, the biological father can't say, I prefer someone that has half my genes. And there's people that have my genes. I can't stand them. I don't like them. I like people that. So it's not a rule, but I think like what you said, Sam, the culture is really what really irritates people. If people don't fit in, or if they can't, easily fit in, and take part within the culture and assimilate back and forth, that really tends to tee people off. And then people also kind of tend to prefer people that look like them or maybe closer to them. But it's not a law. I think it's a preference. And I think it's something that is reinforced. It's not like we're animal. I don't think animals even.
I think this goes to one of the observations we have in our other philosophy group, where we study the works of Kenneth Smith. And I thoroughly agree with this point. And that is, human beings are unlike other animals. Other animals, well, this is observed by many philosophers, other animals, a cat will be a cat. But human beings don't seem to have such a programmed set of behaviours in many senses. They can take on so many different beliefs. Each individual could be so many different people. Any of us brought up within Nazi Germany, put on the uniform, would probably just go with the stream. This is my observation about human nature. Yeah, sure, you can point one out of a crowd of 100 who'll always be good. There's another one at the other end who will invariably be evil, but the other 98 will just turn with the wind. This is what I see in human nature. Wind blows a certain direction, all the flags go that way.
Yeah, but I think the rise of Hitler, and I think a far more important person is Mussolini, who came to power in 1922. He was there for 26 years, and you think, well, he must have been doing something right, because people would have streamed onto the streets, as they did in the end when he took them into a war allied with Hitler. So I think that fascism, Mussolini's fascism, was something that Hitler copied, and then added on the whole Jewish thing.
Oh, okay. What was fascism? What was fascism? How did it arise?
Fascism is getting order out of chaos. And if you want to find out how Mussolini came to power, look at the decade or the 2 decades before he came to power, which was chaos in Italy. And people were
Oh, okay. The
themselves.
unification wasn't going so well then.
No, but unification or not, the people were complaining because they heard that
Italians always complain. They're amongst the planet's biggest complainers.
Well,
I have some Italian ancestry back 200 years ago.
But any country that falls into some sort of chaos will look for somebody to sort it out. Please clean this country up. Do something. And in order to do that, he said, I'll do it, but you've got to give me extra power. You've got to suspend a lot of rights that you've already had. Maybe it's a temporary thing. Maybe I won't be here for very long, but give me the power and I'll clean this up. Mussolini got very annoyed with the mafia in Sicily, and he arrested 11,000 people and because he just disapproved of them. They were criminals, and they were doing a lot of bad things. And a lot of them, of course, found their way into America. So that's the way pretty similar things are going on now. You're emptying the Italian prisons and getting rid of them into America. And then the current border is being flooded by prisons being emptied. It's the same thing. So they think, well, we get rid of all our bad people, and that's one way of bringing order to chaos. And he was successful for some time, and people liked it because one of his 11 points when he came to power was the national minimum wage. How about that? And he told all the employers, you must pay at least a certain amount, whatever the lira was.
Well, the thing with the fascists in general, the whole lot of them, the whole kit and caboodle, is fascism seems to create some successful economic stage early on and then gradually disintegrates. Even the Nazis, the tremendous success for the first few years, but then the bill was coming in. Hitler actually, some claim Hitler had to start a war because the bill was coming in and the Nazis would have lost power.
Yeah,
so
true.
What was the answer? Invade your creditors, steal what they've got. This was, the Nazi war on Europe was a smash and grab.
Yeah.
To keep themselves going, to keep them in power.
That's right.
If they have just sat there with some small gains, eventually an economic decline was about to set in, and they could have lost power with that one.
Yeah, I think not far into Mussolini's reign, just over half the population of Italy were working for the government, and that is not sustainable.
Sounds like Italy today.
Well, yeah. And America is creeping up to that, actually. And I have to say something controversial here, that fascism is of the left. Mussolini was a socialist, and there was no switcheroo. There was no switcheroo in his life.
I'll probably still rate fascism as being right wing.
No, absolutely not. 100% not.
100%.
100% not.
No, the fascists did have a socialist program. That's quite clear.
Of course it was. It was a socialist program, but they didn't do it by politicians taking over industry. They let
you remember what Nietzsche said about the socialists, and we can include the Nazis and the fascists with the socialists, with the Marxists. Fascism, this is a point. Fascism was born of Marxism.
Yes.
People don't understand this. It was just taking class warfare and turning it back to national warfare.
Well, I think Mussolini thought that the socialists were wrong, and whatever they're going to do. I mean, he was able to see what was going on from 1917 in Russia, and he thought that was the wrong thing to do, to take over.
Yeah, well, this is it. The fascists arose essentially to fight the Bolshevik takeover of Europe. For example, the Freikorps in Germany was utilised by the government in Berlin. The government in Berlin was socialist after the war, but they feared the extremism of the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks would wipe out other socialists because they weren't pure enough.
Mm. Yeah.
And this sent eventually the other socialists saw what happened in Russia, where the more moderate socialists were being shot, and thought they ended up joining with the nationalists and joining a few other groups together to oppose the Bolsheviks. In most countries in Europe, they won. There was an enormous amount of fascist governments in Europe. People might have heard of Hitler, the Nazis. They might have heard of Italy. They might have heard of Spain, but you even got the Baltic states were fascist governments to protect them from what they saw as social chaos. and the social chaos that the Bolsheviks might spread.
Yeah, fascism became very attractive to a lot of countries. FDR was very enamored with it, and he copied a lot of what Mussolini did in the Italian economy into America. Crazy things like price fixing and all kinds of other things that Mussolini did or tried to do, but didn't work out.
Well, okay. Anyway, to the comic. I made a few notes. One of the strong elements was homeland, was a strong element in Nora's vision. She had to go back to find her homeland, which, as far as Germans were concerned, was a mythical place full of lakes and nice forests.
It still is, I think.
So what's your homeland, for example? Do you ever have a feeling for a homeland, a nice place to be that you feel was back there in your ancestry or something like that?
What, in England? No.
You don't
No,
feel it. I feel it.
There's two ways of looking at it. One, Britain is a fantastic place to live. It's relatively safe. The economy is great. You get very, very rarely, if ever, extremist governments. No, it's a great place to live, and you can be very happy there. I had a more philosophical view that the class system was driving me crazy. It made no sense. Everywhere I went, you were censured because of your accent, and in a big way. I mean, you may not realize or may not think I've got a very unpleasant accent, but to the middle class and the upper class, I would be excluded from their society because of my accent, and I found that deeply alarming, and I preferred it, reading the American Constitution. That's where I wanted to be.
That's kind of how birds socialize.
Sorry?
That's kind of how birds socialize in a way too. I mean, if they don't go just by sight, they go by their wow, that is incredibly shallow, or people are scared to death or something about loyalty or something. I don't know what. Thinking that they're,
It's absurd. Yeah, the royalty thing is absurd. It just irritated me every time it was mentioned. It irritated me because it made no sense. And they're fabulously rich, those people. They do nothing all day except drink and have sex with all kinds of other people. And
well, they're the important people. You're just a servile class now. Just notice you've got your place. You're there to serve.
Yeah, they still have.
People.
Yeah, they still have that attitude towards us. Yeah, exactly.
And the important thing is to try to be one of them rather than the servile class.
Oh no, you can't be one of them. No, you can't be one of them.
Can't you be the new money?
No. You can work for them. Yeah, you can work for them, but you can't be one of them. You can't marry one of them. No. And I find that absurd and mad, basically. It's.
No, I don't think it is mad. You might find it mad, but when I see a social phenomenon, I assume it has its reasons, even though they're not strictly rational. I believe behaviour has its motives, and it works. The successful,
people say it works, but because they have not experienced a Britain without a royal family for forever, basically.
But put it this way: humanity everywhere, just about everywhere you go, has had a class system which has predominated for thousands of years, and it's only now that people are talking about tearing down the class system. I predict they will fail.
Well, in theory, the United States is classless. In theory, at least the Constitution states that to be a fact. Whether people have secret societies or they go off and and have who knows how many different groups, which groups. But
Does
it's
anyone
all
want to
it's
talk
all
about the
off the
comic?
screen. It's all unofficial. It's off the screen. You know, officially there are no classes in America.
I was just going to say, I took a few notes. So I know that she was brought up near a zone of American occupiers. Certain degree of.
Who are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about the comic.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, you go to page 16, and she's saying one of the things I noticed that we thought of Americans as all chewing gum and reading Donald Duck comics.
Yeah, that's an absurd characterization. Which
I
doesn't
don't
exist.
know if it is actually.
I live here. I know it's untrue.
Okay, you're in Texas somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember you, Sam, from another meeting. Yeah,
I think I do. Yeah.
you like music, from what
Yes,
I
I do.
recollect. Yes. Well, I'm going to say this: that I'm curious about philosophy. I'm curious about how people hold views, and I think I'm starting to give you a guarantee. Unless people learn to do better in thought than what they're doing now, they're sizing themselves up for the future dictatorships. I just see a lot of very sloppy thinking everywhere.
Yeah, I think because maybe I haven't read enough actually. I must read more, but I think Marx was probably the most poisonous writer to have lived. He set up this idea of the dialectic. In other words, I think the dialectic means that your identity is created, and you accept that identity defined by your enemy. And you have an enemy. Everyone has an enemy. And if you're a working class, then rich people are your enemy. They're trying to screw you all the time. And if you're rich, you see the proletariat as likely to swarm your house and murder you and take all your money or whatever.
Toad of Toad Hall, Wind in the Willows, one of my favorite books.
So once that idea gets into people's heads, then they run with it. And
I absolutely agree with Wind of the Willows. We've got to keep those, wild, common people who are all crazy. It's only us, the aristocrats, who can keep order and keep civilization going. And this is probably even Nietzsche agreed subtly. He pointed out you let popularism of the left or the right take over, you'll get a mass slaughter. He saw that in socialism. He literally stated that. He said, socialism will be an interesting experiment in the 20th century. I think that the world's big enough and there's enough people in the world that when they're finished with socialism, when it's slaughtered untold millions and people know better, well, we'll still survive. I don't think socialism will wipe humanity out. He saw that potential. And he's, of course, potentially talking about any socialism, whether it's fascism or Marxism, any collectivism.
But socialism or fascism, and they're very similar in the way they operate. There's one, in other words, there's one way of thinking, and that you must adopt that way of thinking. I heard
Christian Church in the early days.
Yes, of course. They were trying to bring order to chaos, and bravely in some respects. I mean, they stuck their neck out for it and tried to bring order to Europe. They didn't succeed. But I think we all have to understand that this mythical order that we're constantly looking for politicians to bring order, and there will never be that order. There'll never be that order. It's life is messy, and people have accidents, and people make mistakes, and you unwittingly abuse other people.
Well, you're saying there that life has to conform to somebody's ideas about it.
That's fascism.
Well, that's what's his name? The psychologist philosopher who said that he was paraphrasing Hume. Hume said a lot of people cannot distinguish between the is and the ought. They have an idea that the universe must conform to their ought, and that's an emotional quality within us.
That's right. Yeah, that's classic fascism. Yeah.
I'm going to say something that I know no one's probably ever heard of because but you think, the problem is, in a way, is how economics and banking is taught. Because most people believe wealth is distributable. They don't understand fractional reserve banking, and they don't have to understand, you don't have to understand the math and get deep into it. I don't, but it's helpful to understand a little bit about money, that you can't spread it. And the wealth is not, it's something that's a lot more complicated. It's something that keeps, going along, and it's like a circuit break, and it breaks up. But the thing is, in the federal government, and the government owns that money. And the thing is, you can't, Robin Hood never robbed a bank. So because it would be stealing against everyone, and it would be stealing a multiple of, maybe 10 times. So
Robin Hood was an armed robber.
But I think they should try to teach people that it's not, when you put money in the bank, it's not like it's there in the bank. And I know a lot of people would say, well, that's impossible to teach. But just let people know it's so complicated. We let people know circuits are simple.
No, it's just double entry bookkeeping. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but like,
I spent years reading the central bank balance sheets, so I'm a little bit familiar with them.
Well, yeah, then you can't cut it up like a piece of pie and spread it out and distribute it.
Cut up what?
Wealth, capital. You can't just cut up a.
Oh, okay, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that's a good point.
A bank,
you can't just
bank
cut
with
up.
$1 billion, 90% of it is deposits. And I'm not saying bankers, they're elected by board of rep, they're like rock stars, okay? It isn't fair. They get golden parachutes and stuff, but they're elected by a board of directors, they're like rock stars, great base. And they're easy to hate, and then people, they do mess with the stock sometimes, and that's okay. But problem is, people look at that and they think that the CEO runs and has access to billions of dollars, and they don't. So people need to understand what's exactly happening, because it breeds hate.
Yes.
People don't understand money. They think the bank has billions of dollars in currency, and the CEO is they have no idea, and then builds up absolute hatred.
Yeah, I agree with your point there. That's my observation. People think somewhere there's a giant cookie jar of wealth, and the only reason they're not getting it is it isn't being distributed to them. That cookie jar is infinite. It never
again,
runs out.
Cookies.
Again, that's Marxist thinking again.
What's that?
Well, that rich people have got all the money, and they've taken it from the poor. That's why they're poor.
Yeah, well, Marx was extreme, or it was certainly Engels who was saying that they're on the path of war. Their plan is to exterminate the kulak, or the equivalent.
Yeah.
Then we'll all be happy.
Which is poisonous thought.
Oh, well, there's a lot of people around here today who praise Marx, who love the guy, without investigating the nasty side of him.
He was a fantasist.
Yeah, well, he never really lived in any great socialist program, and yet after his death, the world was greatly influenced by him.
Because it was a promise of wealth for no work.
Yep, sounds like the jackpot to me. Gimme.
It's not a precise science too, and a lot of it depends on cooperation, and then people have to work together, and you have to have other things. The money printing the money alone doesn't bring things together. It's people working together. It's the people working, communicating on that
Oh,
level.
you're talking about people being social. Yes. I remember this one from 40 years ago. One philosopher said, the scream for socialism comes from a populace and an age which is antisocial. They scream for socialism from the government because they, as a people, are antisocial.
And then I'm not being political. Like people can just agree or disagree or be on left or right. I'm just saying that people should have more of a reasonable idea that then they might not be able to hate as much as they do. If they have a reasonable idea, they can still be mad as hell, but they might not get to the point where they are conspiracy theorists, but it's in the mainstream.
Well, yeah, I think
bankers and all that.
there's an inability to understand the separation. It's even worse now to understand the separation between emotion and rational thought. Everyone seems to have an idea that everything has to conform to rational thought. But I think people need to observe their irrational emotions and be aware of.
What do you mean rational thought? Do you mean thoughts that have turned into
for example,
No.
for example,
hang on a second. Do you mean
you're not
rational
even
thought?
listening.
No. Do you mean rational thought that's turned into a policy that has proved to be true? Because you can imagine all sorts of nonsense.
Well, you're going back to Socrates. Christianity, for example, and modern society talks about being good. But what if my emotions dictate that I want to be evil and I love it?
Well, then you should see a psychiatrist.
No. This is you being fooled by the rationalists that good is somehow our basic program, and the only reason we're bad is when the machine is broken. That's what you're thinking. I've worked it out as a con job, as nonsense. If we see an advantage by doing bad things, in some form or other, that will eventually get us.
I think the reason that the Northern Europeans, which I call the greater Scandinavians, are the primary force in the world is because they have had Christianity longer than anyone else, and the Christian thought, the things that Jesus taught, which was of love and forgiveness and cooperation, that in itself, that sort of thinking, that trust between people creates wealth. Northern Europeans aren't better than anybody else. This white supremacy is nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
No, I don't
But
know
how
if
do you
that's completely
explain-
true.
How do you explain the wealth of like a place like Japan then?
They copy the Northern European model. They decided to do that after the Second World War. They decided to be 100% Northern European.
What about the wealth they had before World War II?
Wealth doesn't mean that there's a successful society.
They live in smaller units, and the men, there's a high rate of suicide, very high rate. Suicide, people are driven to try to be successful. People aren't happy, and that's not very much. That doesn't sound like a lot of wealth to me. Wealth on paper is completely. It doesn't mean the person that has it, owns that wealth, is able to enjoy it or even have access to it or use it. It's misleading. No, I'm not trying to say that it's always like that. I'm just saying that it's misleading though. And the government, you know, a lot of it's common, it's shared, and not everyone benefits equally from all government spending, but government spending is this enormous amount. And so.
Wait, I'm curious about what you said, though. Are you saying there was no wealth or significant wealth but prior to Christianity?
It's not just wealth; it's culture as well.
But I'm just focused on the wealth part of what you just said.
Well, apparently, I heard quite recently that the wealthiest person in history was an African. So you can.
Who is not Christian?
No, he wasn't. No.
Okay.
It-
Well,
it- it-
I'm just curious. I mean, I'm honestly like considering what you said, and I mean, but you know, you've had other wealthy societies that were not Christian.
No, and the culture the culture that Europe produced, the music, the arts, the wealth of
Power
arts
of Jesus.
and other cultures and inventions, innovations that came out of Europe. And
The
by
power
all
of
means,
Jesus.
they're not the most intelligent
people that
section of
followed the
the
true
world
God
either.
benefited. It's all the rest of the world had followed false gods, you see. The
So what's-
Europeans followed the true one and they won because they
So
followed
what's-
the correct God.
So what's going to happen to us as Christianity dies off?
It won't die off. It will never die off.
You don't think so?
No.
Isn't that, I mean, that's not what Nietzsche was talking
I
about.
don't care. I don't care what Nietzsche said.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, you know, really
What
do,
Jesus,
look up to Jesus.
what Jesus said, what he demonstrated was the perfect religious statement, and that cannot be that statement that he did and said was unequaled and can never be equaled. I mean, he designed it to be that way. He demonstrated that God exists as a physical thing by the healing.
But a lot of people believe in Allah and Christ, and then they have many, many different versions of those religions. Just
Yeah,
many
none
spin-offs.
of them did and said what he did.
No, I'm just saying the influence is there. It's going to stay there. The the great religions, or
Nothing is the Reformed, the Catholic Church is. I've got a lot of respect for a lot of the people in the Catholic Church, but it's very old and it's very medieval and past its time. It should reform itself.
Did you go to Catholic church?
No.
Oh, well, that's why you're saying that, because I mean, I'll tell you, it's not just my opinion. I went to Catholic school and I saw a lot of shitty people. That's just
I'm not defending the church. I'm not defending the church. I would never defend the church. I know what goes on. There's some terrible things go on.
I'm not even
Uh,
talking about the church people. I'm talking about the practitioners, the members.
But were they following Jesus' doctrine?
Well, they say they were. They were a big part of the church. I'm just not a fan. I'm not. I was going to Catholic school for 6 years and just not a fan. I mean, I don't know.
I'm glad you survived, Carolyn.
Thank you. Anyway, No, but I mean, personally, I have tried going to church as an adult, and I've tried various churches. I've tried Protestant, uh, different Protestant churches, and I just don't get what I'm looking for out of that. And
Okay,
I-
I'll give you where your problem starts, Caroline. The word I, you're subjective.
well, I was about to say, I started going to this meditation center, and I'm starting to get a little more insight and, peace out of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't see how churches nowadays can really make a huge.
I'm always
Historically,
amazed when this-
I just
I'm
want to
always
say
amazed when
something,
this-
Key. I just want to say something
okay.
about what Caroline said. Historically, the Western Church, the Roman Catholic, which later split off with the Protestants, were against mystical activities. They virtually banned mystical activities. You can see it in controversies between the Greek Orthodox Church and the Western churches, that the Greek Orthodox accepted mystical behavior. They were more Oriental, but the Western Church, a lot of it was no mystical behavior, no meditation, none of that Oriental stuff.
It took me a lifetime to get to where I eventually found myself, and that was just the 4 books in the Bible, and I managed to get to those 4 books and started reading them. And I had a companion. This is back in England in 2002 when all this started, and we went through, and I instinctively wanted to keep away from all the other stuff because the purity and the gold was in those 4 books, the 4 Gospels, and reading through that was to me was shocking. It was shocking because I've never read that before. Some of those concepts that Jesus was talking about.
Pretty good discussion about.
And he spent all his waking life trying to get those things across to people. And I was shocked, and I thought, well, all the other stuff, the things that the church has been saying for nearly 2,000 years, has been lies in many respects, lies, all covering it up, because they saw themselves as the government of Europe, the Holy Roman Empire. That was a political organization. So the Catholic Church really does try to keep the 4 Gospels hidden. They very rarely quote it in church. It's all about other things. And if you read those 4 books, like me, you will be shocked.
Which 4 books? The Gospels?
Yes.
Well, I've read them. Natalia has read them. Should I be shocked?
I was. You apparently weren't. So, that's the difference between us.
I just want to say, I think just the idea of equality, while it's a good goal, it's preposterous to try to have it forced to implement it, because people can live evenly all over. I mean, it's just, in practice, it's just ridiculous. Being fair is one thing, but to have this equality and force it through, and obviously we can't do it.
What do you mean equality?
Where everything is perfectly equal of outcomes, no discrepancies, people have clean water everywhere.
Are you suggesting that Jesus encouraged that?
No, I'm just saying that that's just expectation. I think that drives hatred is people actually think that it's attainable, that people have to understand that, like maybe in some parts of the United States, they're not going to have equality for a while in some areas because of the area. Maybe some things aren't, and then I'm sure there are people that are, but you're not going to get all you're not going to have everyone on the same level competing on every single metric. I mean, that is absolutely insane to try to do that. A society that would try to do that it doesn't work. It doesn't
Yeah,
work.
because socialists are trying to create the kingdom of God without God. In other words, they're trying to be godlike.
Yeah, you've chanced on, I think there, Sam, big point. I was a Marxist for years, and that's the strength of the religion of Marxism,
Yes, that's right.
is we promise you the heavenly New Jerusalem on earth,
Yeah.
where everyone will be happy and have everything they want. And if you don't work, you'll be looked after. If you work, you'll all have a choice job. And everyone will be happy all the time. And yeah, it's fairy floss. It's nonsense.
People just
But
work
this
on
is a
standard
draw
of
card.
living. I'm sorry, equal access to get as well, as healthy as they can and have the best standard of living. They focused on the very basic stuff and then focus on, they focus on too many things. They focus on empowering people to live the life the way they want to choose and be healthy and have health. I mean, but they try to make everything, you know what I mean? That's all. I'll shut up.
Well, I just can't imagine now any sort of a life without that spiritual connection, because if everything is material, then it will never satisfy. It will never satisfy. If I had $10 million, I would be exactly the same person.
Well,
Do you-
I just draw back to the comic. I was going. Another note I make is that famous word, Schadenfreude. The articles I quote in the comic, the articles I read in the New York Times describe Germany as the homeland of Schadenfreude, a country defined by a rule-driven culture exhibiting traits such as rigid adherence to a principle and a know-it-all streak, where verboten often becomes the first word to impress itself on the mind of a visitor. That was on page 37.
Remind me not to go to Germany.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I've got this friend in Germany. They're a teacher there. Their background's Lebanese, Russian, but it's always a culture shock with the Germans that they're so convinced that they're the smartest people which have ever existed in history. Even the Nazi past, that them overturning the Nazi past will make them more perfect than ever. They're the geniuses. They will overcome their bad qualities in the past. They're just so convinced, she said, all the time that they're right, that they've got the best program, that they're the smartest people in the world. And it's interesting what she says. Even today, they never learn from their past mistakes, is the thing with the Germans, I think. They've got this idea of perfection. They're perfectionists.
Well, part of it's culture, you could say part of it culture and learn, and yeah, I don't know.
But Schadenfreude, that desire to watch other people fail, is claiming, the author is claiming, is a very strong one in Germany. A very passive aggressive attitude.
Well, we went to Germany a few years ago to Berlin, and if you ever get a chance to go to that place and you've never been, go. It's an amazing city, and we were talking to some Germans, and they were talking about their which you see all over Berlin, which is the apartment building, which is a square. And then inside, there's like a tower inside.
I just put on the share screen.
Okay.
Does anyone see the comic picture there?
Yeah, and she was saying, well, the wealthier people live on the outside square, and the poorer people live on the inside one. And this is very acceptable in Berlin and many other parts of Germany. That's the way that's the way you do it, which I found bizarre, to say the least.
Yeah, well, I don't put up too many hopes. So I think if you're going to, bring out the onions, slice them, and cry about World War II, I think start crying about the present situation in Western Europe. Oh, sorry, Eastern Europe. The conflict which is being promoted there between the Western countries and Russia, and they're all screaming for it. You know, they're all screaming that Russia must be ground down.
Don't you realize now why I left it?
Well, I'm thinking it's to learn because what was done wasn't just one simple thing. It was very, very much planned out for years and years. He had people that kind of had an ear for the crowd, for prejudice, for all this, and what didn't just happen. It was a complicated process that was not disrupted, that continued to carry on and on and on until it spread out, and then finally we got into the war. But we let things go. We let Poland go to Russia, and so I think it's something that can be replicated. I think people study this. So I think it's a process that we learn from, so we don't have this happen again, where it's absolutely ridiculous.
I don't see any advantage in encouraging World War III.
No,
they could have called a stop to this and just said, we'll have a ceasefire and try to work things out. We'll just stop where they are. But no, the West has said, and they could be right, I'm not going to argue with that, but I see the danger. The West has said the Russians must be completely driven out of every part of what they defined as Ukraine, including Crimea. And once that happens, it hasn't ended there. The Russians must pay reparations, and they must be further ground down and punished for their wickedness. The world is setting itself up for World War III.
Stephen, who is saying this?
You just look at the Western press. That's what's commonly being said.
Are Western politicians saying that?
Yeah. I just looked through the Western press, and the West has been sending armaments to the Ukraine, and actually overturning any attempts at a ceasefire. That's my observation. I could be wrong.
Well, I agree. Shouldn't characterize Russian people as thugs, and we shouldn't do that. The war is very blunt. I mean, it's a very blunt. I mean, people just write the way they write. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's ugly.
Well, my point is that the Russians might have had a case in certain situations. What they had wanted, they didn't want these countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, well, particularly say something like Belarus or Ukraine, ever becoming a tool of the West, a tool of NATO. They are absolutely opposed to that, and they might have good grounds there that if these nations becomes the tools of NATO, well, the next step will be the invasion of Russia.
Well, Putin really messed up, didn't he? I mean,
certainly. They all messed up. Hitler messed up, didn't he? History is full of mess ups. What do they say? The plan of conquest, a war, goes wrong in the first 24 hours.
Don't forget what happened when Napoleon got into Russia. He did invade Russia, and he beat them, and he sat himself down in the royal palace and said, "Now we're here. We now own Russia. And what did the Russians do? They burned Moscow, burned it to the ground. And
Well,
there was no infrastructure to hold the entire French army, and they had to walk back to Paris.
well, this is the thing. Napoleon wanted to knock Russia out of the story. I knock Russia out. That's an entire flank in my plan of world domination, which is solved. This Hitler fought the same, knock Russia out of the story. That's a big problem out of the way. It doesn't really take much to say defend the Urals. And the present West, this liberal democratic West, Patui, I think nothing of it, is proceeding with the same program. They figure, if we defeat Russia, if we crush it, if we knock it out of existence, we have won. And I saw this years ago. I could see that this is going to be the game. It's been done before. Napoleon tried it, Hitler tried it, and I thought, oh no, it's not possible. I was thinking this decades ago, that the current West is not one day going to try and play the same game. And yet I see it happening before my eyes. They cannot help themselves. They think eventually they will go to Russia and control it. But the modern West will receive its upset. It'll eventually try to conquer Russia, and it will end up being so damaged by the experience that the Western liberal democracy, or whatever it calls itself, will never fully recover from the experience. The Russians will eventually do them over. They'll try to crush the Russians, and eventually, not in their lifetime, the Russians will win, and the Western democracies will not recover from it. They will not understand that they can be beaten.
I think Putin is reckless, and I do believe that he won't. I do believe he is one of those people that cannot lose. And if he has any card or any hand available, he'll use it. And I think he could use nuclear weapons. I mean, he would. I wouldn't. It would have to be under, because he would have to be in like a rat in a corner. Like, see, we use words like rats. You know, he's a human being. We corner him. I think he's someone he can't lose. If there's a coup, or the United States are going to actually, disengage their whole army, and I mean, that would be too much for him. He would have to use nuclear weapons if he still was in power, if people still followed through, because that's what he's got. And I hopefully he won't do that. But I think he's someone that he does not lose. He's one of those people that just can't.
I wouldn't
say Putin. I would say the Russians altogether.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Russia will never give in to anyone puncturing their borders.
Even before Putin was born, they were
like exactly. The Russian border will always be defended by, down to the last Russian alive. They've always been terrified of their borders being invaded, always.
Well, was the Anglo-Saxon West invaded by Napoleon? Was the Anglo-Saxon West invaded by Hitler? No, most of the Anglo-Saxon West has hardly seen an invading army in the last few centuries. I think when was the last battle fought on English soil was back in
1066.
No. The last battle fought on English soil. Well, you probably go back to Lord Montfort. Montfort, and then after that you had the Jacobites.
The English Civil War.
Lord Montfort, the battle with Lord Montfort, I forget the name of it. That was he went against James II, and he was a pretender. But eventually, James II won. But eventually, James II got driven out after that. But as far as I know, that was the last real battle on last ground battle on British soil in the proper sense.
Isn't what we've
Or
been talking,
English soil, I mean.
isn't it what we've been talking about for this whole time about borders, national borders, and should they be respected or not?
Well,
Yeah,
it depends.
there's 3 hours that way is the Mexican border to me, US-Mexican border. It's now open. Well, I don't know if it's open or I don't know. It has been open. And that's caused a huge swathe of hatred and vitriol in this country. And now Russia's border is being threatened. And any time that the fascists, in my view, the fascists that are running the EU, they're trying to dissolve those borders into one. So, and they're right in the middle. They're right in the center of winding up Putin. So it's all about borders and whether we should all say these borders are sacred. They must not be punctured by anything or anybody. You can come through. You come through legally. If we can all say that and all agree to it, I think the world will be.
Yeah, well, there's a strong, very fairy tale belief of a world without borders, where I get everything I ever want and I live a dream. But they just don't understand. The world is full of people who want a piece of the dream as well. They all want a piece of the pie.
And they're willing to travel, aren't they? Travel sometimes thousands of miles.
But there's a pie in every country. There's wealth in every single country. I've been watching a lot of videos coming out of Africa, and boy, those countries are changing rapidly. There's a lot of wealth down there now, and a lot of people changing their minds about, the old way of the slow African way of doing things. That's all changing, and they're getting very snappy, very fast. There's now an entirely African car that's being manufactured there. Pretty good one, apparently. And so, but they respect their borders, even though we call the whole continent Africa, I think 52 countries in Africa. But they respect their, and they believe that each country has its own specific and specific identity and personality.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the comic again. I'm on page 38, where the authoress marries a Jewish guy, and she says, "Not even marrying a Jewish man has lessened my German shame." Or the authoress moved from Germany to New York. Is anybody actually interested in the comic?
Yeah, well, yeah, I read through. It's interesting because you can argue it's not rational to have German collective shame, for Nora to have that, but it also makes sense. And that's the thing with understanding, getting an idea of what is real in the world. It's subjective, and you can look at things different ways. And we're all just basically human beings. We're not,
No, we're mad apes. We're crazy apes. We fell out of the trees, and we're just crazy apes.
And
don't class me with humanity, please.
And the thing is, there's a lot of countries went along. That's the thing that's so disgusting about it. And then it was good that Ken Burns brought it up, because it wasn't just the Germans. It was a lot of collusion, and people not. The thing is, people did not want it, but they did not. Were not deterred or pushed to action. The atrocity of the idea did not disgust them enough to lead to action where they would let people in.
All right, okay, I'll make your point here that prior to World War II, the fascists or even the Nazis received a lot of support from the West, which is denied. After the war, they rewrote history. But the Nazis were a lot more popular in the West, because this is history in hindsight. The view of the Nazis we had in 1945 is not the view of the Nazis they had in the 1930s. In the 1930s,
No,
they
I don't.
thought Hitler was going to protect them from the communists, was
Oh,
going to
yeah.
protect them from the Red Plague.
He was looked up to. He was quite a charmer. Yes, quite a charmer. And then, you know, human nature and people, obviously, we're not as vanilla, rosy, clean as, I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff. Well, you said we're apes.
Yep, I'm a behaviourist.
You know, yeah, people, you know, collectively, people really know how to, I don't know, I hate this word because it's used in other areas, but rigged. Not, you know, that's a good word. People get together and know how to rig stuff and keep people out and have outsiders. And they can do that in many different levels, and they can do, people are afraid they're not going to have the resources they need, and they're fighting constantly for security. And that doesn't mean, usually that means like having
Yep,
outsiders.
that's the mad
Cornering-
ape. That's the guy
cornering the
I
market.
like.
Yeah, if
Give
you
me
work
the
in some
mad
area,
ape.
then that's all that matters is your area, because it's all that matters, because that's your area of work. People are just like that wherever they are. They're like fighting for security, and they have to take more and more, and everyone's just scared to death. And then when people get scared, then they start scapegoating people and say, well, there's got to be a scapegoat.
Well, that's what
And
I was saying.
Yeah.
That people in the various countries in the world want their borders to be secure. That secure borders makes people feel secure and safe.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, I'd say my outlook on the world is this, that I want to go back to being a sperm, crawl back into my dad's ball bag and say to the other sperms, listen, guys, stay there. It's no good out there.
No, that's defeatist.
Okay, in page 57, she makes a quote. 10 days later, Adolf Hitler will give a speech proclaiming that if Jewish financiers should plunge the nations into a world war yet again, the outcome will be the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe. Now, this is an interesting thing. What was Adolf Hitler's belief here? Did he really believe that Jewish financiers had such an extreme dominance in world affairs?
I believe he believed
Stephen or
Yeah.
Peter, can you remember a book that a woman wrote around 1915 that was the origin of the idea that the Jews were plotting to take over the world? Can you remember that book?
Oh,
Okay, yeah, there was the famous 19th century, the Protocols of the Wise Elders.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Ford printed it.
That's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Jews were
That
going to take over the world.
supposedly was a forgery of some Russian establishment.
Yeah.
I'll say is, I heard this 3 years ago from someone that has a very good education. They're very progressive, and it just shocked me. I heard them say, you know what, I know, because they said it much more sophisticated, but they said, but this person doesn't know what he's talking about. He said, if we did not have, Jews, we would not have interest on loans. I mean, come on. See, there's people that talk about money and they don't ever think about it or ever try to understand it. And if they did, they would understand why there's interest on loans and why it's not fair to lend $100 and get back $100. It's not fair. See,
Well, no, I mean that's a very good point, because I think that's one of the reasons that the Jews got into finance was because at some stage in medieval Europe, lending money or charging for lending money was prohibited by the Catholic Church. So therefore, the only way that you could get money was to get it from Jews. You couldn't get it from Christians.
but that's money is from the government, and there's nothing wrong with being a banker, and unless you're a certain ethnicity or a certain race, then it's wrong. And this thing about representative, everyone should represent their be proportional, and it's just garbage. I mean, people aren't just put into positions, people work hard, people, and so it's not just that. I know what it is. It's envy. People are actually envious of people who have different habits or maybe think differently.
Yeah, I
But they
feel the
feel like
emotion of envy as well.
To see them, well, no, there's a lot of really smart people. They're blue collar though. They don't know anything about finance, and they just aren't into the high arts or things like that. And they see over representation
You've
of
got
Jewish
your leader
people,
there.
according
You've
to
got
them.
President Biden's going to make everybody rich.
Well, that's the thing. They think there's a few people running everything, and that's not how it works at all. It can't work that way.
Now that's pure Marxism. That's what Marx did for the world.
There's no one working. There's no one pulling the strings. The world is enormous.
Okay, the problem with the Federal Reserve at the moment is raising interest rates. And I say to people, well, actually, one way of getting out of that would mean that the American government would have to cut spending enormously, and that would stop interest rates rising. And people go, oh, no, keep up the government spending. You can have one of the other. You can have stable interest rates, or you can have out of control government spending. Which poison do you prefer? Let me know. Oh, no, sorry, I want stable interest rates and massive government spending. No, sorry, you can't have both. People don't accept that. They want their cake and eat it sort of scenario is the biggest thing I see everywhere.
Well, people should, I'm just saying, I listen to you, but I think people, if they really do believe the strings are being pulled by one ethnicity at the top, I think they should look into it and study it and really look for that and see if they can find it. Because I think the more people really look at the way the world really is, the more they realize just how much they are full of it. Everyone does. When they think they know, you have to really look at things. And then once you really start seeing how things work, you're like, man, I had no idea how they work that way. And
I don't know. I don't know if Hitler had a case in his claims or not. What's the measure of his claims? I don't know. I haven't seen any studies on it. I don't know if he had a reason or he didn't.
Well, he was quite an amazing person. I mean, he was just amazing person for that time. He was, and amazing.
Yeah, I often hear these kind of undercurrents of admiration for Hitler, but basically he was wrong.
John F. Kennedy liked him,
and FDR did. FDR liked Mussolini, but Hitler.
I don't think he's not a genius.
Hitler, no. But Hitler was wrong about everything.
Yeah,
wrong about everything.
He was wrong about everything.
There was nothing talented about him.
You'd have to be a genius to be wrong about everything. That's more than
what was he right about? Okay, he didn't like the British pursuit of fox hunting. I guess he was right about that.
Was he? Oh, I don't know. It's just some people like to hunt foxes and some people don't like it.
Yeah, and they tear the fox to pieces and put blood all over their faces. Whatever stupid stuff they do in England.
Well, Hitler liked animals.
Yeah, he was pretty much. He was wrong about any economic theory. He was wrong about race. He was wrong about how you.
I don't know. Well, race is just an opinion.
I'm just talking about what he did to Germany, how he got that Germany into that whole from a progressive, from a democracy. I mean, the guy was persistent as hell, and the guy had this energy, and he knew how to bond with he was just the person, it's too bad he was alive. Because not many, I mean, it takes the courage.
But rapists have got energy and they're persistent. It doesn't mean there's anything noble about them.
I mean,
well, they're fulfilling nature's ambition. You see, we're just the pawns of nature. We're mad apes, and we're simply the pawns of our instinctual drives.
I think what we got, what we got, I think what the most interesting thing about that whole period from say the 20s right away through to the 80s, which is that some people, I say a lot of people, like the idea of fascism. They feel safe, they feel looked after, there's quiet, there's order, and there's a lot of attractive things about it.
And once Joe Biden gets finished, there'll be a lot more of them.
Joe
He will
Biden is
create
gonna be
chaos.
I don't think Biden's creating at the top. I think it's at the state level. I think it's communities. I think,
It's the people, it's the fascists that are controlling him are the problem, not Joe Biden.
and Trump isn't, no, I don't know any blue, but Trump's no Adolf Hitler.
No, he's not. No, Trump is interested in
Thank
one
God.
thing. Trump is interested in one thing, and that is the economy. He hasn't got any interest in anything else. Just a successful economy. That's it. And he thinks that the country will be, and it's a secure border, which I agree with. A
Right,
secure border
okay,
and a great economy. That's it. And he thinks that a secure border and a great economy will create a more peaceful country.
But no
Okay.
civil rights. He just wants to ignore parts of the Constitution.
Which parts? Which parts are you talking about?
He'll just annul things. He'll allow states to just roll back and not even try to follow the Constitution. Because,
Yeah, but which parts? You said he ignores parts of the Constitution. Which parts of the
but
Constitution?
he'll roll back if it's practical for him. He'll just let civil rights be rolled back and say it's temporary. And then he's just a
Yeah, but you say civil rights is not, it's not part of the Constitution.
No, I mean, but what I mean is he's not, in my opinion, he is not a moral person. He's amoral. He's a person that will go with whatever he has to do to gain power. He makes terrible, his judgment's horrible.
Yeah, can you tell me which
Maybe not as bad as Hitler.
which judgments are you talking about?
Well, civil rights, he'll roll back and he'll allow, states to just become police states. I think.
I'm not. Which states are you talking about?
Well, the state, a lot of or areas of states. Not
Yeah,
all.
but which states are you saying
Well,
are
there's
becoming
a lot of
police states?
conservative. Well, in the 60s, the South, it used to be Democrat, racist, and then it flipped. But but it's not so much different. And the North and the South, it's really the North and the South. It's not so much the party that's the big difference. Parties are more the North and South.
Can we talk about soap now?
Oh,
About
yeah.
German cleanliness?
Oh, the oxen soap? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
well, on page 188, things German. Gauloseif, popular in Germany since the mid-1800s, is a soap made of ox gallbladder. It is biodegradable and perfume-free. The gallbladder's natural salts work against the most persistent stains, especially when applied with a Wurzelburst, a scrubbing brush made out of wood and vegetable fibres. Many Germans living in the United States complain about the shortness of American wash cycles, 45 minutes versus 2.4 hours, low water temperatures, 120 Fahrenheit versus 194 Fahrenheit for the Germans. And as a result, the excessive use of bleach, stains on white fabric, deeply unsettle me. Even the whitest whites setting, my American washing machine doesn't bring back a fabric's original purity, and I rely on gas leaf and Persil, a time-tested German laundry detergent invented in 1907. This sounds like, a good Hitler speech about soap, well, it's German cleanliness. And
Apparently, Hitler bathed around 4 times a day.
You always look clean.
And I think that was his weird plug-in to fascism, because Mussolini wasn't interested in Jews at all. It didn't cross his mind to exterminate Jews.
Anyway, I'm going to say that the authoress is obsessed with the stain of the past. She's back there trying to check out whether her family were Nazis and freaking out at the fort. She finds her grandfather had joined the party but hadn't been particularly active. And she's seeking forgiveness. This is a person who probably didn't originally know too much and then becomes obsessed with the stain on the white sheet. And this is with a lot of people. This is with a lot of people in society. This is something that we're brought up with in school, is perfectionism. And Nazi Germany was seeking perfection.
Well, even I talked about my bias, and now I understand. Now I realize there's a lot of bias, and people people take the brunt that are here today on Earth. The past is the past. So people, if they hear German accent, yeah, a lot of people are judgmental. You got to have something to blame, or some target, some object to blame.
Yeah, well, actually, the Nazis.
Not fair. I know.
The Nazis have been made into the supreme bogeymen of history. And they're just there amongst the many, if you ask me.
And I think rightly so. What they did was unspeakable.
I think
Actually, the communists in Russia were worse.
No, this is the thing. Are you going to have it in the United States after a few years?
No.
But I think
because you're split in the United States. You've split into the extremes now. Your people, your Democrats and your Americans, your Republicans, I'm sorry, the Democrats and Republicans. I'm from Australia. It's not quite my situation, but you perceive it. It's a visceral hatred which is building up between those two groups. Where is it going to lead? Is it going to lead to half a century's time? Will the Republicans and the Democrats be putting each other into extermination camps?
A lot of them are closer to, it's strange as it might seem. Yeah, politics, you can't really tell by positions and things. There's something else in it, but it switches jerseys.
You have a case where the Republicans gain power
geographic
and exterminate the Democrats, and then the Democrats get power again, become the government, and they establish a pogrom against Republicans.
I think they're going to break up.
We're going to see purges.
More parties are going to break up, like most European countries are going to have multiple parties taking.
But how do you think my prediction's going, that you will have in America of political purges even unto death?
No, it won't happen.
It won't happen. Okay. No. Not you. That only happens in other countries.
Well, yes, that's right. That's right. Because other countries haven't got the constitution that we have.
Okay.
Our constitution is the first target, will be the first target of a fascist dictator. They've got to get rid of that. They have to get rid of that. And that is almost impossible to get rid of it. It's almost impossible to get rid of one of the clauses. It takes forever to get one of those out.
The right to bear arms.
Yes, imagine that. That will be, you have at least 26 states to agree to take it out. Good luck on that. It's got to pass through the House, the Senate, and the President has got to sign off on it, and 26 states, at least 26 states.
There's a lot more
it's so contentious that you probably get states seceding.
Also, the technology. I mean, Hitler and Stalin, they could just have the press run propaganda. They could go out and make big speeches, and people are very limited to what information they got. It's a totally different world today. It's easy to turn your back and then say nothing's happening. It's in your backyard when it's just the newspapers and speeches on the radio and propaganda, and then it's easy to ignore it. But when it's hard to ignore it,
I feel safe now. You've assured me that Anglo-Saxon civilization in the form of America cannot devolve
What's an
towards
Anglo-Saxon?
authoritarianism and
I
dictatorship.
call it Greater Scandinavia. Yeah, we're the predominant culture in this country. Yeah.
Well, you know, the citizens of the world, you know, they kind of make the rules. They kind of have the.
But it's interesting that the Constitution of the United States is a kind of fascism. It's this thing at the top, this authority at the top, which cannot be questioned ever at all, unless you go through an extraordinary, expensive and time-consuming process of removing even part of it. The Supreme Court, well, you know, people have been complaining about the Supreme Court since America was born. They're not perfect. They're not perfect, but they pretty much they stick to the Constitution, and they say to Congress, you can't do that. The thing you trying to pass, you can't do it. So the Supreme Court can throw out something that the government has decided to do. How many countries in the world can do that? Not many.
Well, technology-wise, we're on top still, and then all this artificial intelligence and everything can be kind of automated, and it is put through, and then so people can even tweak and misread it, you know, and you know, it's people don't have to know it in their minds anymore, and who knows, you might get a virtual modulated president.
Okay, we discussed Germans. German purity and attitudes towards cleanliness, and how much they hate anything anal as contributing to their political view of the world. There was a mention of Yoo-hoo glue, which we have in Australia as German glue. She talks about this glue which you use to put anything back together. UHU glue, which tended to come in a yellow satchel. You don't have that in the United States.
Yeah, you can buy it in England.
Yeah, oh, they've got it in England. Oh, great. Yeah. Well, this is something psychological here when she's talking about this glue to put everything back together, but you'll still see the cracks.
Well, I mean, why not? You know, so long as the German borders are not expanded, and so long as the German borders are not invaded, why not let them do what they want to do? They do any crazy stuff they want to do. I mean, isn't that a peaceful, a world peaceful action is to leave them alone?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Another point she makes is a story, I think, you know, where she was bearing a child or something. Now she's referring to the child, something with a state of mind as pure, as undisturbed as snow. So again, she's talking about this pure, white, unstained self that she wants to find. She wants to overcome the sin.
Well, she's just a regular human being, you know.
I don't think she's regular. I don't think she's regular at all. I think she's obsessed.
I can sympathize with modern day Germans and thinking that my grandfathers or my great grandfathers were involved in the most horrific thing that was.
Oh, look, if you go back far enough, your ancestors are cannibals. Okay, enjoy.
Yeah, but this is within.
Oh,
within
okay. We
lifetime.
just mark off the years. How do we work that one out?
Well, you want to know anything in your family that's you know, people have done maybe things that are wrong. I mean, it could be in other situations too.
Is it a stain? Is it a stain?
Yeah, it
It's
is
a
a stain.
metaphor.
Yeah, it is a stain. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're obsessed with stains. She brought up the German word fehlerfrei, faultless. The obsession with having the pure state, the faultless state.
Well, I think
I'd like to know. I'd like to
a little
know.
bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why the German government have welcomed and encouraged Muslims from the Far East, the Middle East, into Germany, because I think somehow that a completely different culture will dissolve something. Again, using Muslims to clean Germany, sort of, and so Germany will be in time, Germany will be unrecognized as a culture. And therefore,
Okay, yeah, one of her lines was, can the present ever heal wrongs from long ago?
it's a good question. But I think, yeah, I think you got to read. You can't just read the history's headlines, because it's far too simple. It's like people saying white people destroyed all the Indians in America. That's not true. The headline is tells you something, but it doesn't tell you the truth about actually what happened. Because actually what happened was individual incidents all over America, and there was a lot of things moving around. There were people on both sides vying for power. It was a very, very complex situation between the two cultures.
And
Wasn't simple.
culture can gin up and really target scapegoats and really add to that hate and make it burn much brighter. Culture can make a huge, and it's not the sole part of the racism, but it can really, really strengthen it and put it in overdrive. And so
Yes,
culture
right.
has to be people have to be responsible collectively. Our governments have to be responsible. And our government Britain could have stopped Hitler when he was moseying around, just crossing the Rhine and going to Austria.
Well, we've got to worry about the Reds. The Reds are out there, the Russians. The Reds are ready to come over. Hitler's a bulwark against the evil Bolsheviks.
It's all fact. It was all. Yeah, but it's the people were driving all this. Without the people, Hitler would have been nothing. So there was a democratic process of sorts that put him into power. Without the people's support, he would have been nothing. Listen, at the end of Alexander the Great's career, it was ended by the army. His own army stopped him. Said, "This is far enough. We're not going any further." So Alexander was probably one of the most powerful figures in all of history, but he was stopped by his own people. And Hitler relied on Goebbels, who was, the head of propaganda, to keep public opinion on Hitler's side. It was very important. There would have been no Nazi party otherwise.
To think of it, Hitler was kind of like a darling. He kind of praised the West. A lot of people liked him. He embraced eugenics.
Yeah, we've mentioned this a few times. Prior to
That's why he was able to get away. That's why he was able to get
he enjoyed some good press.
Because he was so liked. That's why he was allowed to get away with so much crap. People were, I don't know why, but they were just he wooed them. He wooed.
Yes. Yes, he did.
But
there were people in Germany who knew that he was wrong about pretty much everything, but they couldn't speak, and they knew that it was going to be disastrous. They knew that it was going to crash. But they were suppressed, and they could be arrested. So, one of the things that in my view promotes peace is to be able to question and challenge everything, not just some things, everything. So
okay, anyway, I'll get back to the comic. I'll get back to the comic. Okay.
This banning of hate speech is a fascist idea.
Yeah, of course. Hate and love are part of the human character. If you try to stop,
what is hate
if
speech?
you try to absolutely rule out hate, you'll probably have a very extreme reaction in the future.
yeah,
It's like a LNG tank.
you say
To
something.
stop it
can't
from
be said.
exploding, you have to let it vent. But these people think they can completely remake human beings like they're just made out of Lego pieces or something like that. These people are idiots. We are being governed now by imbeciles, increasingly imbecilic, and we're headed for hell because we're ruled by the stupid and increasingly stupid.
Yeah, I don't think I'll go along with that. I think we're ruled by more fascism than we like to think, because they're trying to control the narrative. They're trying to control our opinions. That's what the idea of anti-hate speech is about. That's clearly what it's about. It's about you're not allowed to speak that. You're not allowed to say that. You can't say that about
I'm
people,
going to,
or you'll lose your job.
Anyway, I'm just going to take up another point from the comic. In the 2017 national election in Germany has given rise to a new right-wing party. The extreme right has claimed seats in parliament again for the first time in more than half a century. And she's talking about this, what was it?
A lot of anti-Semitism and racism has never gone away. It's stayed. It might have.
Alternative for Germany.
We have more
This
diversity.
was the new party. I don't know, but she sees it as a powerful drift back to the Nazis. This party that calls itself the Alternative for Germany.
Going back to the pure Nazi, that's impossible. You have to go back in time and we lived very primitive.
That's impossible, is it? That you won't have.
You're not going to go back to that kind of animal.
You don't think so? You don't think that Hitler and the Nazis were human? That they can be safely put in a box outside humanity?
No, at all. I believe they're very human being.
They'll be back again in some new,
if someone comes along with a plan to create order out of chaos, they will be voted for.
You know, monsters have feelings too. You know?
Well, that's it. I say to people, and this offends a lot of people, I say, all of us, there is a bit of St. Francis and there's a bit of Hitler at the other end.
I agree.
Or otherwise, we wouldn't even know them. We couldn't recognise Hitler unless there was some Hitler in us.
Well, yeah, people can talk about things and not dehumanize anyone, and still not still describe everything the way it happened to the degree it happened. There's no need to say anyone is dehumanize anyone. You know, there are human beings. It's to say that someone is above human nature being. They're not. There's just an ordinary person.
I might add before signing off that I have a big problem with what people preach as good and evil. To me, this is subjective. People leave out the subject. Look at yourself. When you describe the universe and what you think should be right and proper in the universe, think about the subject, you, the person that's viewing the universe, and what are your limitations. People talk as though something like the human can understand the universe objectively. And I say we have our limitations, but people talk.
Dreaming. People dream. People don't use precise. It's just, just because people say that doesn't mean that they're limited to that. People are practical. And I just think, what if they start taking disabled people, very disabled people, quadriplegic or people with all sorts of disabilities. And what if they start euthanizing? What if they start killing? How about that?
Well, what happens when you have too many old people in the healthcare system and you decide you can't afford them anymore? Send around the people with the needles. I could see that happening.
You know what? There's not if you poll people, it's not that unusual to get I don't know what percentage it would be, but depending how you questioned it, you would get probably a pretty good amount of people saying, under certain circumstances, severely mentally ill, severely, people with, congenital or genital diseases or genetic
abortion.
Diseases.
This is my big question, that, abortion's gotten to the point where you can have a healthy born baby and they'll say it has no right to live. It's going to be aborted.
I think it's very important what stage of the development of the fetus is in. I know that sounds ridiculous and stupid as hell, but you know what? A lot of people don't seem to make a distinction between conception and 9 months I do think it matters. And I think
No,
the
no, no,
earlier,
no, it doesn't matter. And it's scientifically proved that as soon as the sperm hits the egg, the DNA created by that conjunction is the complete personality of that to be human.
I mean, there's less suffering though. Yeah, it does take a life. Yeah, it does take a life, but there's less suffering.
Well, I'd probably disagree and say, but there certainly is a certain point where the entity, the fetus, is something we'd call human, fully human.
It's human. It's human as soon as that.
Yeah, I don't
hits the
agree
egg.
with that. But I wonder about a group of people in America, in the world, who are perfectly happy with the abortion of babies. And, maybe they're right, but it's the same thing. You are exterminating an innocent human life.
Of course you are.
And they make these excuses for it. They say how bad the Nazis are and how bad these people are. And yet they're perfectly happy to abort an advanced term baby. That's no problem.
Yeah, I don't want to see anyone treated inhumanely. No one.
Not even an advanced fetus.
No, I get mad when I hear, because there are people that talk about, well, if I could do this person, no.
I went to a pro-life
Don't do that.
rally just for the sake of it, and I heard the Antifa crowd calling out, small crowd, and I say, the only good baby is a dead baby.
Well, things get crazy in politics and things like that. I mean, people shout all sorts of things.
Well, before we all go, I think you either understand what Jesus said or you don't. He talked about stony ground. His words just come out and they fall on stony ground. Some people hear it and they do nothing. What he said was the truth. And the farther you get away from that truth, the more bestial you become. Like
okay, you're a believer in Jesus. I
Absolutely.
respect Jesus.
Yeah,
I'm not an absolute believer.
If you leave that, then you will become a beast.
Well,
Okay.
Judeo-Christian entity, I'm for some reason can't talk, but that's the basis kind of our Constitution country. It's kind of the part of baked into the culture, Christ and Judaism and the teachings. It's
not
kind
Judaism.
of
I'm not a Jew. No, I'm not a Jew. I believe in Jesus' message.
No, I mean just the religion itself, the Torah or whatever. I mean, that's what formed the. Yeah, I'm not really. I don't believe in. I'm not an atheist, but I assume there's nothing. And so I know that's most. I'm like
but
minority.
but the thing about atheists that
atheists
always say there is no God.
Well, they don't know. You can't prove it, and so
then you're not an atheist.
Yeah, but I just it's just not on the table. I'm keep an open mind, but I believe when
Well, no.
I die, I would bet. If I had to bet, I would say I would just die.
Then you're not an atheist.
I'm just going to disappear for a few minutes.
Atheists will.
I'll just mention I'm going to disappear for a few minutes.
Atheists will always say there is no God.
That's why I don't like.
But Christians say, I believe there is a God.
I'd like
So
to
that's
not
a
be
huge
part of any
difference.
group, yeah, if I can help it. At least stay away of any group. Yeah.
Well, then you will suffer as a result.
Yeah, but
which is loneliness, depression.
my life is not that bad. I mean,
that's where I was before I found it. Before I eventually found that message that he said, and I thought, yeah, that's true. It's got to be true.
Well, I do. I mean that's the foundation of I was brought up on, even though a lot of people are brought up on that, and it's just kind of baked in. A lot of atheists take their children to church because they want them to have the experience, be able to choose. It's so much part of the country. If we had different religion forming country, it'd be different. But that's
Yeah, and
it's
I'm
Christianity.
yeah, and I'm the first to say that in American churches, in British churches where I'm from, there's a lot of charlatans and a lot of frankly evil people. But
Okay.
I'm not talking about that structure. I'm talking about what I finally found, as I said earlier, that Jesus' message rang true.
Well, I know what you mean.
That it couldn't
Yeah.
be, that it couldn't. I couldn't find the key to unlock the idea that it was a lie.
Oh, yeah, just
And I
his
still can't
message.
find it.
I still read that. Yes, yeah, I still read that. Still, I mean, and then you never can close out the idea. I can't prove there's no God, but yeah, just the teachings, not any, just that alone. The Gospels, very powerful, and they shape a lot of. I mean, a lot of people aspire to kind of conform to that. If they don't, doesn't mean they will, but we're taught to turn the other cheek. Everyone pretty much knows that, whether they do
How
it or not.
about, yeah, I mean, how about
Hard
that?
to-
I mean, the thing is, turn the other cheek. So someone insults you and you say, okay, have you got another, what's turning, what is the verbal equivalent of turning the other cheek? I don't know. Have you got another insult, or just smile or something, or just take it, just take the insult? And the thing is, does it work? Does Jesus' teaching work? In other words, what he said, judge a tree by its fruit.
I think there's nothing close to compete with it. Put it that way.
No, there isn't. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I think for as far as being mentally healthy and everything, and for instance, finding someone that's done horrible things or connected to horrible things and then torturing them, doing inhumane things to them. I know there's people that are, they scare me, but they justify by saying it's Stalin, it's Hitler, or it's someone else. I do this, but everyone is just a human being, even though they're glorified and made into monsters. They're made into monsters because of their people. Prop them up, they make them monsters. They're just, without that power, they're just human beings.
But these are people that would be God.
Yep. It's the power they get and the people prop up. It's the power that's given to them. Like Hitler, he wooed all the private sector, government people and government, and then just left the scapegoated Jews and other people and he knew exactly how people thought, and he knew how to speak to people and know exactly how to speak with them. He was very good interpersonally at agreeing and understanding all sorts of people in many different businesses. He drummed up hate and he wooed them.
He drummed up hate, and his ambition in life, and Mussolini's ambition in life, was world peace, believe it or not. So he put himself above Jesus, above God, that he was better than them.
Yep.
He saw them. He saw Jesus as a failure.
Oh yeah.
Because he could do better.
Oh yeah. He said it's a problem. Yeah. And then Kath, I know it's the thing is it's not what's the word? It's not consistent. The things that happened, I mean, Catholics were persecuted, and then there was religious groups that claimed Christ was a German, and there was all sorts of crazy beliefs, and it was just nuts. And they didn't have the technology we have today. They're isolated with the radio, papers.
Well, they had radio, and they had cinema, and they had photographs.
Yeah, and so
you can still do a lot with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think.
Oh, and live events. I mean, live events. That was a huge.
I think he would have been laughed out of town. I don't think. I think it was quite easy. I mean, it wasn't easy, obviously, or more people would do it. But I mean, I don't think he would not get away with. He'd be exposed. The people, most of them, just they didn't hardly ever see him, just saw him in the press and pictures and heard him speak. And then when they heard him speak, they're probably really bored, probably hungry, broke, and mad, and hating Jews. Then they hear this guy speak German, and it's just. So that the thing that I like that though, it's just when you have a group of people and they focus on a small part of that group and just tear them apart. That is something that is just so un-American, unfair, you can call it. It's just sickening. It's sickening. You don't do that to any. I mean, and the thing is, it should be obscene to everyone, no matter what their bias is, to look at people being persecuted that way. I mean, it's just ridiculously obscene. And I'm still amazed that it was such a tiny population of people. And, and then so many people believe what Hitler said. And so many, today I hear people who still harbor, they still have that in them. And, I don't know, and they hate other people too. They hate other people. It's not, but I just want to say, a lot of people have been wiped out in history. I think a lot of times it's been people that were envied, not people that were despised. They've been cleared out, and then euthanization and everything like that. But I think what uprisings usually, it's quite common for the people that are envied, because people are just filled with all sorts of envy. It's a really huge problem. I don't know why it is. I just say, but Germans, you think would have a good self-esteem, they would be able to. And the thing, I don't understand it. It must be religious. I mean, it must be religious. They must. I don't know. Oh no, I can't explain it, to tell you the truth. I can't explain it because people.
There is a
Think.
I haven't done this research, but I've read the kind of the headlines and the précis of it, that because the Jewish diaspora were so badly treated and they were under stress from 70 AD until modern times, they were a people without a country, and they were despised for killing Jesus. Think about that. And that stress caused their IQ to raise. It's a controversial theory, but there are ways in which IQ can be garnered from the literature of the times, the actions, etc., etc. I don't know how it all works. But
You hit the nail on the head, because it's it's that it doesn't.
there's a theory that
It is
stress
powerful.
over
idea.
generations that does increase IQ. Yeah.
It does. I mean, I don't. Overall, the number, the IQ number is incredibly powerful, and the thing is, it represents more than anything. Represents something that is. It's in people. Different groups, it shouldn't really matter. People shouldn't really get upset if different groups fluctuate with different IQs, or for one's lower than the other. They should have enough respect to say, it's not everything, I'm fine. And then don't look at a certain group of, look, maybe Asians will be treated like that. I don't know. But the thing is, people are individuals, and they're not different races. I mean, so who cares? I mean, does everyone hate people that go to Ivy League? Everyone hate those people because they get SATs higher than everyone say, oh, they get tests, they don't want to kill people from Harvard. They don't want to overrun Harvard or all the universities, because it's just, you know,
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I think this goes back to the Marxist dialectic again, and I think he's fundamentally an evil person. I think to put this into the world as a possibility that if we overturn the rich, that the world will be a better place, and that notion has gripped people for 150 years, maybe.
Well, you know,
Longer.
well, you know, in families, what they do is say, well, you know, you have other abilities and skills, focus on those.
Yeah,
And,
that's
you know,
right.
and the IQ test really is overblown. If people give so much importance to it, that's part of the problem. It is a measurement, but people make it almost, you know, something, you know, like tattooed on your head that it's like more than it is. They blow it way out of proportion.
Yeah.
And they don't look
That's
at
right.
anything else, anything good about things that are real in the world other than that metric. It's ridiculous, but
It
that,
is,
you know,
it is.
and that's people, scientists and people have really played a part in this.
Yeah, and it's been suggested by various psychologists that a high IQ will guarantee melancholy. I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, well, you know, it's just it's a quotient from a raw score, and so I mean, United States we're getting dumped, you know, so I guess the average intelligence is getting lower, but
Well, it suggests that people of average intelligence are happier.
but the thing is, it's just a tool. It wasn't meant to value someone's worth.
No,
It's
No, that's
just a
right.
metric. The
that's right.
military used it. It's not supposed to value everything good about you, all the aptitude a person has or intelligence has. It's just a tool. And people blow it so out of proportion.
Yeah,
And they do
I
that
agree.
because,
I agree.
and the scientists do it, and then they say groups. But you know, that's the part, and that's, you know, that makes people, and then people play that off, and people hate. I wish people could just look at people as individuals.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think we have a great country here. I'm an American citizen now.
Oh, good.
2019 became American citizen, so I view myself as American as anybody else, and it's a shame that there's so much hatred going on. Yeah, people are pulling guns on each other because of their opinions. Believe it or not, it's absurd, absolutely
yeah.
absurd. And as Americans, we should make our border secure. You can come in legally and join us, but you join our culture. You don't bring your culture with you and create immigrant bubbles that just annoy everybody and will annoy you living in the bubble. So I think we have to value our American culture. Slavery was an awful mistake, but we paid a big price for it. 500,000 white guys got blown to pieces, plus the money it cost. So
yeah.
we did pay a price for that awful mistake. And so
there is a lot more. I'm sorry. There is a lot more. I don't know. Integration is the word. I see a lot more diversity where well, the thing is, race isn't, there is no such thing as race, but we use the word, marriages of different ethnicities, people coming out, different combinations you wouldn't see, and it's very neat. It's very interesting. You see all different parents, people of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, and you see a lot of, it's like mixing colors. I guess that's not a good way to say it, but it should not be people in their, who are afraid, so they feel like they have to work together, and it should be more, people, but that's what they do. And even with sex, men and women, it's, if they don't know the sex of someone, and it's like someone might be a man or a woman, that drives people nuts. A lot of people get mad because I have to know, is that a man or a woman? God damn it.
No.
is that a man or a woman? They have to know, but it's just a human being. Who cares? I mean, but people
Well,
say woman first, not human being, man first, not human being.
well, I think it's important to know because men and women are so incredibly different.
But
I think
Well,
that there are at least the last time I looked at the figures, something like there's 6,000 differences between a man and a woman.
oh
physically.
yeah, it's important to know that. But I mean, just socially though, how you treat someone status wise, you know, actually, I you know, like, well, you said like Christ loving, to love people, that's something comes from inside. It's not something that you figure out, you know, and tally up. It's something that comes from the inside, whatever creates that spirit or virtual spirit.
Well, I think the ability to love one another is
The
is something
respect.
that he revealed. He revealed that in terms of that he gave people their health back, and that's a loving act. He didn't make money. He could have made a lot of money. He could have made a lot of money, but he didn't. He chose to restore the health of people as a loving act,
Oh.
and we can do the same. We can do exactly the same, and we can heal each other. And us Americans can all learn to love one another, and love the country, love the Constitution, and love one another.
But I think inner wisdom, and there's a lot of things that we can, in the right mode, we will make the right decision. It's not that we'll become totally useless and just flip like a fish. And here, I think there's a lot of stuff that we're not in control of a lot of the stuff going on in our brains. You know, we meditate, we have wisdom, and a lot of people take things to the extreme. They say, well, you just can't roll over. Well, no, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It takes wisdom. It's the situation, the specific situation that matters, where people are in their situation. They have to know for that situation. There's no just general way of acting. People have to be in the here and now and think for themselves. And
yes, I just can't, you know, when people talk about philosophy and the great philosophers, and they all try to, like I said before, to try and get order out of chaos and to think of some way in which to bring peace to the world. And to me, it's following Jesus. It was the early Christian called it the way.
mhm.
It's like the way through the forest, the way. So you go in this direction and you see this type of scenery, and it's very different. And you see people in different ways, and you can't be godlike because you accept that there is a God. All the fascists, all the people we've been talking about, they all believed that they were God. They had godlike
They're all
capabilities
in
and powers.
5 places.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I don't
right.
want to
that's
hold you
right.
on, you know, I had no idea. I thought this was going to be just about, you know, the book, you know, Nora Krug, you know, in the book. But it's good. I got a lot of, you know, stuff I never thought through, and yeah, you know, well, I just want to say the thing that a lot of people, it's like they say, well, what happened was there was worse things that happened. Well, yes, but we're not talking about everything at once. We're talking about this.
Yeah.
And then well, they say, you know, to just focus on what happened here. Yeah, no one's saying that Adolf Hitler is actually Satan, and the German people are the most evil people ever to live in civilized society. You know, but a lot of people, for some reason, they have to say, well, other people then were bad and we're part of this and we're part. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I don't know why people have to fight so much. And then it's just
because of political ideas. The political idea that people should be given some sort of salary every month for doing nothing. What is it called now? It's some such thing it's called. And it drives them crazy. And I think they should have it. They should think they go to college and it should be paid for, or their health should be paid for, or how about have a free car? Everyone needs a car, so why shouldn't the government give you a car?
And then
This thing rolls on and rolls on and rolls on, and
everyone should be,
and they never get
immaculate.
and they never get any satisfaction. No satisfaction ever ensues because of this.
yep. And then, and it's like everyone has to, be above average. Everyone has to have the same IQ, and there has to be no differences in groups and everything. It's like, who made it so terrible to begin with, and who took was one very narrow metric and said, this is God, and determines everything. It's because of what happened it's been drummed up in society, and it's terrible to tell one group, like, you score lower as a group in this area, and you have to work harder. But you'll catch up. I mean, don't treat people like as a group. I don't even know all my heritage. I don't care. I mean, it's interesting maybe, but it's like, I'm a human, I'm an individual, and if people don't respect other people's individuals, and I mean, people need statistics too, but there is this, it's just setting people up to just, it's a sick society, because it's, instead of trying to let people choose their own way of living and increase their standard of living, giving them the options people need, options to do things that everything is about competing. Everything is about testing in schools, and everything is about, trying to close the gap in income and stuff. And
Yeah,
it's
I
just,
know, and it'll never stop. They'll never stop there. They'll
You
never
can't.
stop complaining. They'll never stop wanting more and more and more and more. And I keep going back to Jesus' message. It means it's a fundamental note of our culture, and a lot of people, I suggest, maybe yourself, have absorbed a lot of that by osmosis without actually knowing, because you're not behaving the way that you did in pre-Christian times. Where are your ancestors from?
Germany and England.
Excuse me, can I butt in here just for a second?
Sure.
I just have a really interesting conversation. I'm really enjoying listening to it. Just a general thing of what is this live streaming to Twitch TV for? I've never seen that before.
Or maybe the Chinese want to store it.
Did you guys set that up on purpose, or is the host did, or?
Someone did, yeah. Is there a way of cutting it off? I don't care. I don't care. Basically,
I just want to say, I'm
the
a very,
Chinese can listen to me. I don't give a damn what they say.
No, I was just curious.
I'm a very particular person. I'm kind of a little bit, I don't stick in anywhere in my family. I'm a little bit odd for different reasons. And so, yep, I am not like, I'm really kind of odd. So most people don't
I'm odd too.
obsess
So
about stuff.
we're the odd couple.
So no one in my family is kind of, yeah, so, but to me, it's always, I don't know, I want to, I don't know, there's something about, I don't know. I just would hope that more and more people will have just, enough, even a little bit, or decency to be outraged, and to, I don't think people even understand when they watch documentaries. I don't think it really hits them what's actually happening. But that's something. Yeah. So I just, yeah, I'll just let you go. I can't even think straight. But it's it's a very it's. I've had hate, but then you have to weed your garden. You have to face it, and you have to deal with it, and you have to realize that it's.
Well, I mean,
know.
don't forget, something like 1,500 years ago, which is not a huge amount of time. us people, you're from Germany. My other side was from Germany. Our people were Vikings,
Oh, yes,
and they were pretty, not all the time. They were farmers at some stages, but they could be pretty disgusting
very,
in terms of
yes.
violence, violence, gang rape, the whole piece.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and they thought it was great. They thought it was great fun. So their morality was like the upside down of Christian thought, or the thought that Jesus wanted us to love each other, not to kill each other.
And Jesus, he wanted to protect people that's from being taken advantage of. So if people are outnumbered or put in a position where they're vulnerable because of the way things are, this brute force, he protects, he was rounded up and, crucified.
Yes, he was.
So to protect people that are.
Well, he said that if people find out that you followed me and you followed me, they will persecute you. They will try to take you down. And that's true. That's true today. It's true today as it ever was.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you go. I just can't think straight anymore. I just got a lot of stuff. Got the
Peter is a Jarnstrom. Well, I mean, that is
Jarnstrom, yeah.
that is way North Europe.
But I was adopted. Yeah.
Oh, you were adopted. Oh,
My father.
That was your
Yeah.
family's name.
Yeah, my father. I don't know the side of the family very very well. My father was adopted too from Finnish parents. So.
Finnish. Oh, right, yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in a Finnish culture. I didn't like hearing people speak Finnish and not knowing what they were saying. It bugged me. I didn't like to hear that because
it's funny. My wife, she found with ancestry.com or whatever it is, she found that she has a lot of Finnish genes. So,
yeah.
And they don't like being called Scandinavians, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Quite why, I'm not sure, but I think it's a different cultural group, I think.
Well, I just think there's a lot to learn from, the history, and it's American history, Civil War, the Holocaust. Yeah. It's in our American interest as a country. It's embedded all in that. It's just we can learn from it because there's so much to learn. We can't learn from 300 years ago. We don't have technology. We don't have the records. We have this, and it didn't happen that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, people act like it's happened 1,000 years ago. No.
Peter, have you read the Federalist Papers?
Not many of some of them. But...
Yeah, I keep meaning to read them. I think it's quite important that Americans do read that because it's very near the heart of America, I think.
Well, yeah, it's good to look at the country, and realize the founding fathers are, they're not perfect at all, but that's not the point. That's not the point. It was the age of reason, and they wanted to create a new country with a new idea of government. Mm-hmm. It wasn't with some stupid king who thinks he's next to God. That was a nonsense. They wanted a president that could be removed every now and then, peacefully. Yeah. The real world
it's a great
rough
system.
And messy. It's really rough and messy.
I know,
but not as bad as the Vikings. How they would bash baby skulls in and do all. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. I found that by some reading that the Viking culture was very, very similar to the Comanche culture that I'm sitting right in the middle of. Very, very similar. So, the Comanches had nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. They used to. I don't even think about what English and French all they did to each other.
Oh yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. That was a
appreciate the talk. Maybe I'll see you.
Yeah. I should look out for your name.
I really like the book a lot. I really like the book a lot, though. I'm going through it a third time. I get more details out of each time, and
Yeah.
So we had a
I
good
should try.
conversation.
I should try and look it up myself. Thank you,
Yeah.
Peter. It's been a
Thanks. It made me
it's been-
think, and maybe got my head spinning. So thank you. Thank you so much. I'll let you go.
Thank you, Peter, and I hope to see you again. It's been very enjoyable. Thank you very much.
You as well. I hope to see you as well. Thanks. Sam.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Peter.
Okay, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, I can hear you, but
Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is get to why, what you're saying,
oh,
what you're saying, what is the point? Like, why are you? And your point is that if you think that a thought is immaterial, then there could be a God.
Yeah, it could be a god. Yeah, could be a lot of them.
But
Maybe
you're-
there's heaps of gods.
Okay, well, that's definitely one way to look at it. That I like that. I like that analogy. That's a cool
Well,
way to look at it.
well, I'd say that the more materialistic, scientific people seem to think that their particular worldview can take in the entire universe. That the universe is simply a machine, and everything is predictable.
Hmm. Everything is predictable?
Oh, that was Sir Isaac Newton's idea.
I'm not sure I follow
Well,
that.
Newtonian physics. You know, when Newton came along and created the laws of physics,
Yeah.
well, people started to think, well, you know, prior to Newton, people would think, oh, look, there's a big world, a God must have created it. And then Newton starts pointing out, well, actually, there's all these laws there that you can manipulate.
Okay. You can manipulate?
Yeah. See, this is the thing. We can talk about laws of physics. I can say we can measure stuff like heat, magnetism, all this stuff. But when it comes to the minds, we don't have that kind of certainty, do we?
Okay.
So, you know, when people talk about being rational, well, I would say, for example, let's say at a simple level, we have two parts of the mind. One part is the emotional part of the mind, and the other part is the more rational element of the mind. And I think people fail to pay attention to the fact that emotions themselves are not that rational. And they inhibit their emotions because they expect emotions to be rational. I'm not saying, you know, if you have an emotional impulse to follow it, I'm simply saying respect that you have an emotional impulse.
Okay, so another thing you're pointing out is that people who say that they're rational kind of they try to suppress their emotional side.
Yeah, they don't pay attention to, they try to fit emotion within their rational world scheme. And
Well,
this doesn't always work.
yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I guess in this kind of society though, we have to sort of suppress our emotions. We have to suppress our emotions. If
Yeah,
you
well,
want.
that's it. You know, it's sort of like, you know, you're at work, somebody spilt hot tea on you, and you feel like grabbing the kettle and bashing them over the head with the kettle. But my point is, of course, you don't act out of that emotion. You keep your rationale. But at the same time, be careful of trying to, how would you say, exile that emotion. Recognize that you do have emotions there that don't fit into some huge rational scheme.
Well, okay, again, what is the importance of discussing this?
Well,
Where are you
well,
getting?
you'll end up being a very unhappy person unless you recognize the importance of your emotion, because it's your emotion that gives you the will to live. For example, you're doing a job. It works out better that when you're in a workplace which is happier than one which is miserable.
Yes.
That's your emotion. Your emotion lends you to that. I remember one person saying that 3 points to happiness is being doing something you like, being surrounded by people you like, and having something to look forward to. So that's your emotion. Your emotion wants. And you've got to be careful when you say, well, I won't follow my emotion, because it's your emotion that gives you the will to live. Emotional satisfaction is important.
Well, I guess people would probably try to focus on following positive emotions instead of negative ones.
Well, even who knows? How do you know that that positive emotions are absolutely positive and negative emotions are absolutely negative? We rate our emotions, but yeah, maybe we should all go out and be pirates. Pirates are the bad guys, we say, but maybe it'd be good fun to be a pirate. But even if due to practical reasons, we don't want to be a pirate.
Okay, well, wouldn't you say though that if you have an emotion that is telling you to isolate yourself from people, that's probably a negative emotion? I mean, we can comfortably say that that's probably not healthy unless you're in danger. I mean,
Well, okay, this is the thing, respect your feeling to isolate yourself. Don't say that it's purely a negative. I understand that for practical reasons, you might want to expand on your sociability, but that feeling that drives you to isolate yourself might exist for a reason. There might be a purpose in it. It's not totally bad.
okay.
Swim with it. Swim with your emotions.
But okay, let's say, I mean, well, we're just so used to looking at things in terms of black and white or good or evil.
Exactly.
And it's a protective thing. It keeps us, when we say something is bad, we try to stay away from it because we feel.
Well, this is the thing. People say they're good people. And I see people living in a very comfortable Western civilization where you don't need to be bad. But what happens to them if they were in a really bad country? How would they survive? You might have to cheat and lie and steal to survive in some circumstances. Normally, you don't need to do it in our Western civilization. So people that have never had a temptation to be bad call themselves good. Even the Christians of a couple of centuries ago were well aware that there was a temptation to do bad. But today they've forgotten that they seem to think that their vision of goodness is the be all and end all of existence.
Well, again, when we have these philosophical discussions, it really helps me to see the big picture. So I'm asking you.
You mean a worldview, your worldview. We have world views or cosmic conceptions. That's the big
Well,
picture.
I'm just saying, like, okay, why is this important to discuss, or how is this relevant to my life?
Philosophy is the desire to know things purely for the sake of knowing. Sophism is the desire to know things for an outcome, a practical outcome. So which are you? Or you could be both.
Okay, but I'm actually, I want to stick to what we were just talking about, because this is another problem when you're talking about philosophy, is you tend to jump around from this to that. Okay, so you're telling me things are not inherently good or bad. That's a very Buddhist concept. So how do you look at things? Do you don't say this is good or bad? And I don't know, like I would be afraid.
Well, I have opinions what are good and bad, and in relationship to myself and my own context. But is there such a thing as universal good and bad? Is there a bad for everything in the universe? Is there a good for everything in the universe?
Okay, well, I think we can agree that you have to look at the situation. to
Your,
determine-
your personal context
Yeah,
or the context in relation to larger entities like a nation. There could be good and bad for a nation.
right, right. So, okay, well, we solved that one, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say it would be nice to talk a lot longer on this, but so I've sort of got to go.
All right.
Oh, I'll see you later, Caroline, and see you
Okay.
next time, David.
Okay.
Nice talking with you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
It says enable in browser window, and it doesn't show me where that is going to be.
See, now I can hear you much better.
Right.
I don't know why that is. Before it was so quiet, I could barely hear you.
Yeah, that's fine. I can't turn my camera on. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's fine. I had a pretty good video call with somebody I met through the dating app, and
Oh.
we might meet up tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, good. Hmm.